What's up, champ? What's up, Tay? How y'all doing? Tonight we gonna be talking about certain type of laws that apply to people because we got a national climate and a national headline of injustice, and they talking about changing all type of laws, such as police reform, defunding the police, but we got some other issues pertaining to people that's sentenced to time for crimes they haven't been found guilty of by a jury. So that's a constitutional right, and we need to tie that right into all these other reforms that's going on. And the main case we're going to be talking about is my man Tone case, Anton White, free Anton White and Eric Hicks. Both of them serving life without parole for basically charges that was dismissed that the jury didn't find them guilty of. We're going to go into that. We're going to speak to Anton's mother, Miss B. And we're going to talk about some different type of ways, like, where we from D.C., but I was thinking about something earlier. We from D.C., but Virginia and Maryland surrounds D.C., which are states. And states have representatives in Congress and things like that. So we got enough homies and friends and partners and cousins that live in places like Capitol Heights, Forest Heights, District Heights, Upper Marlboro, Waldorf. Those are our family, those are our cousins and things like that. They can kind of like voice some things, and we need to, encourage some of those people to vote and put some of the issues that'll help us, even if it's only for a point where as though it could get something done in Congress. Eleanor Holmes Norton, what could she do for us in Congress, for real, for real? No disrespect to her. So we gonna give it a few minutes. It's 9 o'clock. I'm gonna give you by the way, I hope everybody having a nice, safe day. I'm author Eyone Williams, and prison reform and juvenile justice is a passion of mine. I was sentenced to a life sentence at 16 years old. I did 17 years in prison. While in prison, I learned a little bit of law. I was able to fight a little bit to get my sentence reduced, and fought things with the parole board and ended up making parole on my sentence. So, while in the law library, you run into other cases and you find other type of things out. And, you learn that when you first come to jail, you hardly know anything. If you people like us. And once I seen how wrong we were done, it made me want to be able to fight. And the only way for me to be able to fight was to learn what laws applied to me, or what laws applied to any type of case that I had caught at that time when I was living a life where as though you might have a run-in with the police. And we basically right now, we're talking about a totally different issue, an issue that's much, much bigger than just going to jail and finding out some different type of laws. These laws we talking about tonight, these laws apply to, no exaggeration, probably tens of thousands of people. And that's people that's being sentenced for unconvicted, dismissed, or acquitted crime. So when a person is arrested, we're talking about federal court right now, the federal courts in the United States, U.S. district courts. When a person is arrested, they're indicted, they go to trial. Let's say they have 5 counts on their indictment, they go to trial. They beat 4 counts, so they leave you with 1 count. Now you'll be sentenced for 1 count. Say for an example, you get 5 years for that 1 count, or that charge carries 5 years. Once you get the sentencing, the government comes in there, they put on a whole nother story, and then the judge has the ability and the right in federal court to sentence you for even the charges that you were not found guilty of, that a jury either didn't hear, said you didn't do it, or they just was dropped at some other point in time. but the judge is still giving people sentences for this. So like I said, we're going to talk to Miss B about her experience with her son, because she made a good point. I really wanted to make the point for herself, but, you know, rest in peace to George Floyd. You know what I mean? I hope his family get all the justice in the world that they got coming. But, you know, as you look at that tape of the police officer with his knee on his neck, you know, that's a terrible thought, terrible image. But, you know, in some of these courtrooms, they got their knee on our people's neck, and they had their knee on their neck for years and years and years. And while they doing all this other reform and for the police and how the police conduct themselves in the country, you know what I mean? Some of these issues need to make it on somebody's desk and somebody's courtroom as well. That's you, mama? I'm looking for you, Miss B. Yeah, so just to give you a brief little rundown on some of the stuff that's a fact on that case, and we're going for the record, since this is how the case is known in the law books, this is basically the case of the First Street Crew, so-called First Street Crew. Hit the screen, mama. Requested. I'm trying to say, trying to let you get on.
Yeah, I'm here.
You good?
I'm here. Hello.
Hi, how you doing, man? I appreciate you taking the time out for us to discuss some of these topics, right?
Yes.
For people who don't know, we just gonna call you Miss B. That's good.
Fine. It's fine.
That's fine. All right. So what we talking about tonight is unjustly sentenced individuals, and you know, we basically spotlight Anton White and Eric Hicks, and this is Miss B for y'all that don't know, and this is the mother of Anton White. You know what I mean? She's been a person that's had to deal with what I call the side effects of the justice system. You know, a lot of times we get in trouble, you know, and our fathers and our mothers and our sisters, you know, they left out here to deal with it. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of start it off by, you know, asking, you know, who you are, you know, and how these things have affected you with your son having one of these type of sentences that we're talking about.
May I call you E?
Yeah, you can call
Okay.
me whatever. I'm
Okay.
Eyone.
You know, the whole time that when Anton got sentenced, I haven't been insane. You know, I
Right.
haven't been, I've been going through up and downs. But however, I really feel that, just seeing how justice is, where is justice? Where is justice for one, for the blacks,
Yeah.
the people of color? You know, not just the people of color. My son. My son had when he got sentenced. When he got sentenced, he has, he wasn't found guilty for murder. Matter of fact, I don't think the drugs got indicted with the indictment,
Okay. Right.
and he get 20 years without parole.
Right.
You know, and excuse me.
No, I was listening to you. Go ahead.
But however, I was doing some research. As I researched it, the people, the Dirty Dozens,
Yes.
they got 49 years without parole, but every last one of them is home now.
Right.
Every last one of them. Wasn't they crime? Well, anyway, I'm not going there, but where is the justice when it comes around? Because I'm feeling like now, after seeing all of this stuff and all this stuff going on in the world now, I'm thinking that I'm matter of fact, now I'm thinking, I'm feeling that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, they done
Yeah.
killed me, my son, my family. Their knee
Right.
was on Aunt Tone's back.
Right. Let me say something. I was thinking you mentioned the Dirty Dozen. Like, some people might not be as hip as me or you, and they may not know what the Dirty Dozen is. But for people, that's not from where we from, the Dirty
Oh,
Dozen was a name that was given to a group of dirty police, actually out of the 5th District in Washington, D.C. in the 90s. They were notorious and known for crime and got convicted of all type of federal crimes, racketeering, drug charges, a couple different things. But the Dirty Dozen plays a small role. I'm not going to say a major role, but it plays a small role when we get to talking about evidence and things that actually defend Tone and the whole First Street Crew case. Because when this informant that actually created this whole case on Antone's case, a guy named by Arvell Williams, when he was actually murdered, and this is the murder that's been in question for 30 years, the first police on the scene to his murder was 2 of the people from the Dirty Dozen. And, these are the type of things that were hidden and weren't really exposed or spotlighted when this trial occurred in D.C. And for people that don't know or don't remember the 90s, this was one of the biggest trials in court, in federal court in the 90s, which was actually a group of teenagers. The oldest person on the case was only about 24 years old, if I'm not mistaken, and that was Eric White, and we've been fighting for him for all of these years. But nevertheless, she mentioned the Dirty Dozen. You got to think that, some of these things are things that are in question, but the biggest question is that these guys are doing life without parole, and they're doing life without parole based really on this murder, and this murder they have never been convicted of. And to take it a step further, like Ms. Bettye said, they've never been convicted of any violent crimes. So where is the justice? As she mentioned, the police officer was on this person's neck for almost 9 minutes. They're on all of the people's necks, and they definitely on Antone's neck and Eric Hicks' neck with this type of case where they hold them in jail and they denying all type of relief based on a murder that no one says they did. There's no witness. Like I talked to Tone for an example, as me and you spoke about. Tone's main issue was, man, if I committed the murder, you think I committed the murder, take me to trial. And I always wanted to know, how did that feel? How does that affect your family, just knowing that he's in jail and he's basically doing his life sentence for something that's not only he's not convicted of, but that no one said he did.
The question is embedded in my mind is this. The judge said Antone wasn't found guilty for the murder, right? But the judge said, he gave it that and said, I believe you're guilty. Because I believe you're guilty, I'm sentence you because he believed in his sentence. So that has something to do with this. And I kept reading the Sixth Amendment, going over the Sixth Amendment, and I questioned that. Did the judge overturn that, or how that worked? You remember? I asked you
I mean, that's a good way to say that.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to say that. But to be honest, they found a way. And actually, I was reading some of these letters that Tone wrote and put out. Tone actually documented this in one of these letters, and people could go to the OurCity website and check out some of these writings. But there's basically clauses and provision in federal law that say that which is relevant conduct. And Danny and Ronald and Doomy spoke on this many times when they were interviewed. This relevant conduct thing. Some of these words throw regular people off. To substitute the words relevant conduct, they saying that any behavior you committed that we know about, we're going to punish you for. Like, something that we talked about one time that's really crazy that they not supposed to do, because the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, to stick to what you're saying, say you can't do it. But for an example, they say that Eric Hicks ran from the police with a firearm on him. He has no gun charges, but they still sentenced him. And if I'm correct, right, I'd have read some of the case law. They gave him 2 points in federal sentences for this, right? Now, for people that don't know, I think that if you go over maybe 50, but don't quote me on that, you go into life without parole. So even 2 tiny points like this can change your sentence from 10 years to life without parole. Now, we talking about Tone case and Eric, because those are the ones that still in on this case right here. Even in the relief, President Obama and then this next administration that allowed these laws to pass, these fair sentencing acts, these First Step Acts, and these things are supposed to get a relief for those violations that those people did for the Sixth Amendment. As you mentioned, no jury said they murdered anybody, but if you look at their case, for example, right here while we're doing this, I'm reading one of their appeals. The judge uses the exact words that we saying they not. We're saying that they only convicted of drug offenses, right, Mom?
Okay.
All right, but the judge says the First Street crew, which from early 1988 until the defendant's arrest approximately 5 years later, sold crack cocaine. Right now, we're gonna give them that. They got two. They got like 2 ounces, and then we're gonna try to save some of this as we go on to talk, because I do want to mention before I forget that on 2 of the recordings that's supposed to be evidence against Tone, the police lost that. Do you remember that?
Oh my
It didn't
goodness.
even exist.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to that, but I want to say this one thing that the judge said. The judge said, arrest approximately 5 years later, that the First Street crew, right, sold crack cocaine and engaged in violent activities, including the murder and witness intimidation. So the judge is saying that we not let you go because of violent activities, murders, and witness intimidation, right? So none of that exists. So I don't understand how they get away with that. I mean, I know what they're doing, but it's not proper. But the murder that they keep including, no jury ever found them guilty of. No jury asked them to be sentenced to that.
Absolutely.
You know, so
No
that's the
violent
only thing that I can answer for the Sixth Amendment. You know, I don't really have a real answer to give you, but it's definitely a conversation for us to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So, the Sixth Amendment, we talking about the Sixth Amendment and the jury rights, but they also, they also violated all types of due process with this matter right here, because they saying that the First Street crew, so-called, is the reason why the witness was not there. You need to prove that they were the reason why the witness wasn't there according to the laws that they use.
What about that tape that they didn't show up? They had a tape of the witness or the police or somebody supposed to have been with the witness, but the police wasn't there.
I'm not sure about the tape, but when I was researching the case the other day, I was looking up a part of it, and that's how I came across the Dirty Dozen aspect of the case, because a police by the name of Dale Sutherland, if I'm not mistaken, was like the handler of this informant. He was supposed to be with this informant at all times, but just so happened he wasn't there that day, which is how those allegations started to surface and rumors started to spread throughout DC streets that the Dirty Dozen had something to do with the matter. So, I don't know how any of that gets lost, and not to mention that these violent activities, right, that they attribute to the First Street crew, right? Mm-hmm. Other people have been found guilty of at least 3 of these activities since then, and they were being prosecuted at the same time. So it's so much evidence and so many things that, it's almost like it's missed or overlooked when it comes to asking for these men's freedom.
Yeah. And back to the no violence stuff,
right.
No conviction, no violence of conviction. However, and then they were trying to accuse Antone for like you said, the charges for the First Street crew. And all of that was going on during that time. Antone was incarcerated, correct?
Correct. Correct. I mean, and that's been proven too.
But, however, it's been proven and they were brought to the courts.
Yes. Yes. And then like another point when you say proven and it's recorded in the courts, what a lot of people don't understand when we talk about this murder, right? For an example, for people that don't know, Tone and the First Street crew was on trial in '94, which was a tactic that the DC homicide and DC prosecutors used all the time. They tried you in the trial of public opinion and put things in the Washington Post. But anyway, in the Washington Post attributed a number of shootings and murders to the First Street crew and Antone White specifically, and this information came up in their trial. However, in the District of Columbia, for people that may not know, Superior Court prosecutors and federal court prosecutors all work in the same building, which is 555. So while Antone and the First Street crew was being prosecuted in federal court and being accused and allegedly accused of these violent acts, they had 2 other guys from the same neighborhood on trial in Superior Court for the same violent acts. So at this point in time, we get to look at the situation like who's playing games. And these 2 individuals, not that we trying to lay guilt at nobody's doorstep, we just talking about the prosecutor. The prosecutor found them guilty of at least 2 or 3 of those crimes. So how can these men be serving time, life sentences, by the way, right? How can these men be serving life sentences in the feds convicted of a crime that the feds, the federal courts, are accusing the First Street crew of. You know, I mean, it's clearly there's something that's wrong. There's nothing. The prosecutor in Superior Court couldn't say he didn't know what was going on in federal court. It was in the Washington Post, right? And the prosecutor in federal court couldn't say what was going on in Superior Court because he's in the office. Whoever investigates the shootings bring all the information to the prosecutor's office. It's not a secret. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So, you know, those are big issues when we talk about these matters of, you know, law. But for sure, the Sixth Amendment, which is the biggest issue, and I'm gonna bring up the bill that we was talking about. Actually, I'm gonna read some of it. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read a part of it now. The bill that I was telling you about, to mention it correctly, right, is a bill that was presented last year by Dick Durbin and Senator Grassley, introduced as a bipartisan criminal justice reform bill. You know, Ronald actually the first person to hit me to this bill too. So, you know, he might know a little law. But it says on September 26th of 2019 in Washington, the United States Senator Dick Durbin, he's a Democrat from Illinois, and Chuck Grassley, which is a Republican from Iowa. You know, all these people, we talking federal now. Like, you know, DC Council can't really help us with Tone and Earth. You know, DC Council don't have that reach because we're not a state, and these guys are sentenced by the federal courts. But anyway, the lead sponsors of the landmark First Step Act, and we're actually hoping that this First Step Act, this is the act that we want to free Eric Hicks and Anton White. But today introduced a bipartisan bill prohibiting the punishment of acquitted conduct acts of 2019, which would end the unjust practice of judges increasing sentences based on the conduct for which a defendant has been acquitted by a jury. Now, although that says acquitted by a jury, you know, I'm not going to take everybody into a law class. Deep down in the bill, even the parts that said acquitted by a jury, because the jury never heard this murder charge for Tony, and they didn't get to say not guilty because it was dismissed. So it doesn't basically exist at all. They dismissed. But it goes further on to say why they support this bill. And this is very important for not only just Tone, because we got comrades and brothers all over the whole federal system that have been sentenced for this. Like, you know, another dear friend of Tone's, a dude named Opio Moore, he got a life sentence for a box of bullets. So, like, you can see how this stuff is just absurd. But it says if any American is acquitted of charges by a jury of their peers, then some sentencing judge shouldn't be able to find them guilty anyway and add to their punishment. A bedrock principle of our criminal justice system is that defendants are innocent until proven guilty. The use of acquitted conduct in sentencing punishes people for what they haven't been convicted of. That's not acceptable, and it's not American. Back in 2014, Supreme Court Justice Scalia, Thomas, and Ginsburg all agreed, but they weren't able to hear cases and stop this practice. And as Tone mentioned in one of those letters that he wrote, he hit me to something. They just saying to stop this practice, but this practice has been going on for 40 years. You know, we only been out of like Reconstruction and all that other stuff 150 years. So if you subtract that, that's only 100 years removed from some type of slavery act. But the second part says, under our Constitution, defendants can only be convicted of a crime if a jury of their peers finds that they are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. However, federal law inexplicably allows judges to override a jury verdict of not guilty by sentencing defendants for acquitted conduct. This practice is inconsistent with the Constitution's guarantees of due process, which is the Fifth Amendment, and the right to a trial by jury, which is the Sixth Amendment. And our bipartisan bill will make it clear that this unjust practice is prohibited under federal law. So, you know, as DC residents, like I said, we don't have no vote or no say-so for that, right? But all of our cousins and our family and our friends in Maryland and Virginia do. So what me and Tone was actually talking about was spreading this information among all of our supporters and our family and our friends in states, because this is the only way we can really affect some legislative changes. Now, in my opinion, and I'm not deep into politics, right? In my opinion, it don't matter if Donald Trump is in office or Joe Biden is in office for this matter, because this matter is already on the table. So if it's on the table right now and it's supported by Democrats and Republicans, it's something that everybody that has a loved one in prison is doing a life sentence that's over sentenced and unjustly sentenced. It's the only thing that I see that can help us. So I wanted to share that.
Okay. Let me take you back. Maybe I'm seeing like I don't understand, but is that the First Step Act you talking about? No.
Nah, but this comes after the First Step Act. This guy right here, Grassley, right? He was one of the top supporters of the First Step Act. After the First Step Act already went into law, because we know they went into law already, because that's our tone and trying to get out right now. He's now brought this to the table in 2019, but nothing has happened of it right now. But it's a big issue, and I think the issue should be tied into this whole thing that we have going on right now with all these other criminal justice reforms, because it hasn't been ruled on.
Okay.
But it's definitely attacking, and I don't understand, why it's taking so long. When I looked up the cases, I looked up Tone case, and from Tone case, it directed me to a case by a guy named Eric Beck, right? And I had never heard of this, right? So I thought the federal government was the only people that were sentencing defendants for crimes that they weren't found guilty of or were acquitted of, right?
Okay.
And this guy named Eric Beck for the murder charge. He had already done time in prison for a 90s charge. He made done 13 years. He came off. So I think he caught the charge in 2013. He was accused of murder and carrying a gun without a license. He went to trial. The jury found him not guilty, which is actually different from Tone in them case. They said not guilty, but they found him guilty of the firearm. The firearm should only gave him 5 years. The judge in Michigan, so what I'm pointing out is that even state courts need to be corrected. The judge in Michigan said he sentenced him for the 5 years for the gun, but still gave him 20 years to include the murder, although the jury said not guilty, because this particular judge, and anybody that want to read the case, they can read it. Just Google Eric Beck, a Michigan case. He still sentenced him for the murder, because I guess in his discretion and in his mind, outside of the law, he said, how can you be found guilty of the murder, but you didn't get found guilty of the murder? That's contrary to the law. That's contrary to the Sixth Amendment. And this is a real live living person in state court that got found not guilty and the judge did it. Why that's not on CNN? Why that's not on the nightly news? Like, I found it. I sent it back to Tone and said, have you ever heard of this case? He said he had never heard of it. So how are people just sitting in jail secretly for crimes that they was found not guilty of?
Then where's the justice?
That is definitely the whole point. I didn't know it was a big problem like that. I never knew these things, like the rules of the federal government. A lot of times we don't understand them. They've written in languages and codes that, we don't know.
I was talking to my son about that today too, the language. Mm-hmm.
Basically, in these type of situations, what would you want somebody to do, or, what would you encourage, the people, the friends and supporters of Antone to do to assist this cause?
What do I?
Personally. Yeah.
Personally?
I'm just asking you.
I want them to
personally.
get together and, get together and stick with us and to prove that Antone is not guilty and he should be home, because that is too much time. Matter of fact, he's 27 years for what?
Right.
For what? To prove that, they just fear because he's a violent person, but it wasn't shown, it wasn't proved to anyone that he's violent in no kind of way. Matter of fact, the jails, the police, once I was there visiting, the officer came out and taking him in the back so he can solve an issue that they have in the prison. You get what I'm saying? Right. So the prison, he's helping out in the prison. He's a role model in the prison, but he can't be a role model outside.
In society. Yeah, that don't make sense.
So it's like they're using him in there, but he could be used better out here. With what's all this is just going on out here.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that. For example, like I said, I did all that time in prison. I see some people on here that have been in prison and got loved ones that have been in prison. You know, Tone name, you know, not to over exaggerate, the Tone name in his honor and this respect, it go far from the East Coast to the West Coast. You know, they understand what type of influence people like, you know, Tone and Eric have, not only just amongst their self, but amongst other people as well. You know what I mean? And that's something that is definitely remarkable. And we need to support them, and we need to, man, beat them drums and blow all them horns just like we do for these same causes. Like, everybody's in the uproar about these police killings. I'm in the uproar too. It's definitely disturbing, but we got so many other issues that we didn't let go quiet. All these issues need to be put together. I feel as though the type of pain that you're going through psychologically or emotionally for 30 years is the same type of pain these other people's parents is going to go through that been murdered and brutalized by police. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Everybody is in one big old pot of injustice when it comes to that topic.
That's why we should get together and voice our
You know,
opinion.
so,
Yeah.
I agree. So anything that we could do, I mean, a lot of people are starting to wake up and see that these things are wrong. But I know one thing we can do, and, you know, I would do all I can to bring light to the matter. But one thing we can do is always raise these issues, you know, and make it clear. You know, we don't have to use big words and big legal terms. You used the Sixth Amendment so perfectly just now that the Sixth Amendment says you have the right to a trial by jury. If the jury didn't say get a man life, let's keep in mind, man, Tone only got found guilty of evidence of about 57 or 58 grams of crack. That's roughly 2 ounces at the max, and at the maximum. Even if you look up these cases, I'm not just making this up saying that it's bad or it should be that way. He should have got no more than 20 or 30 years. At that case, at 27, he'd be just about time served, time to go home. The only thing that's holding him in jail is this murder, and it should be no way, and we need to convey that to anybody that will listen and anybody that will help. It should be no way that the man could be held in jail for a murder that he's not found guilty of. And I kind of agree with his opinion on the matter. We ain't saying just let him go. If you wanted to take him to trial again, take him to trial. But I'm saying give him the due process that the Fifth Amendment says, and give him the right to the trial by jury so the jury can hear the evidence. Nobody ever said he did. I don't understand how you could be found guilty, punished, and penalized and not really see the relief of this first step back. If nobody's saying you did it, the judge constantly saying through all the paperwork, if anybody Google his case, he committed the murder, he's behind the murder, he's a part of the murder. You know, it's got to be some other type of way that, man, we address that matter. And the courts have it set up now where they don't even hear these matters. They keep going and dealing with cases, and, you know, people that's in the law, they know Booker and Blakely, they know cases that normal people don't talk about, but they know that the courts have addressed this issue of people going to trial, getting found not guilty, or the stuff being acquitted, and they get the sentencing, and the judge and the prosecutor just have a field day. That's a modern day legal lynch. You know, we still being hung. The jury is not there anymore. Nobody that knows the law is there anymore. So now it's just you, the judge, and the prosecutor. The prosecutor bring this paperwork and say, oh, they found, let's use Tone for now. Oh, yeah, we found them guilty of 2 ounces of crack, and we found them guilty of selling these drugs for this amount of time. But by the way, we think he killed the guy too, so let's throw that in there. Like, that's kangaroo court.
That's exactly what was said. It was
right?
said just like that. Hello?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the people need to understand that aspect. See, a lot of people read those papers, and I had pulled the articles up to go into them, but I don't even want to go into the lies that they told in the articles. Even if I read them and bring it back out there, it'll make a person think that, oh, he had something to do with all those shootings. But I've made contact with the guy that wrote those articles. He had wrote this book called S Street Rising. His name is Ruben Castilla, something like that. I made contact with him, and I'm not calling myself screaming on him or nothing, but I said, man, you know, you wrote some real inflammatory articles about Antone and Eric and Ronald back in the 90s. And, you know, when you wrote these articles, you know, nobody was convicted of these crimes that you alleged that the prosecutor insinuated that he had done, right? Mm-hmm. He wrote me back and he said that he was surprised. He couldn't believe that someone else was convicted for. So we've been going back and forth. I've been trying to show him that, look, why don't you help us clear the narrative up? He can't help us clear the case up. But, you know, you wrote some articles, and now as a journalist, somebody has presented you with information that you wrote something inflammatory and incorrect. You know, why don't you help us put some stories out there to show how they've been unjustly sentenced for those crimes? and the murders. You know what I mean? Because keep in mind, some of those murders, when he told the story like something out of Hollywood. Like it was this terrible drug kingpin that was only 20 years old, sitting in DC jail on a payphone saying, hey, go kill witness 1, go kill witness 2, go kill witness 3. Where do they get that from? It's like they watching too much Law and Order.
It was on television.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, and that's the big issue with it for me, you know what I mean? And, you know, just talking to you, I just always wanted to see, you know, how a person looks at it from the point of view of a mother. But, you know, when you mentioned to me that you'd have read the Constitution and you as an American citizen, you know, regardless of what we think of America, we born here, right? So we got some natural rights that come with being born here. I would never understand or couldn't imagine how a person just constantly keep looking at the Constitution and say that, damn, this shit don't apply to me.
Only thing that applied that he did have a speedy a speedy trial, and everything else is just blank. You know, everything else is blank. And I'm like, you know, he wouldn't even, he couldn't even present the evidence. The evidence was thrown out. It was a void. Some of the evidence was a void because it was for him, not against him. You get what I'm saying? They want to bring everything against him, but you know, something for him. It was and matter of fact, they brought witnesses in that they paid them under the table. Now they still hiding out. They still hiding out somewhere because they got paid, and they never been with Eyone under no kind of circumstances. You know, none. Never
and see, those are kind of things that we got to bring up.
Hung with Eyone at all.
Yeah, so basically didn't know him. You know, we call them like renter rats. They just paid to say what they need to say.
Then he hidden for they hiding from their family. No, they family know where they are, but however, they hiding from the rest of us.
Yeah. But I definitely appreciate you taking the time out to you know, talk to us about your ordeal as a mother dealing with a son. You know, man, me personally, I know I don't have to say it, but you know, I say it just because somebody else may say, you know, anything that I can do or anything I can bring attention to pertaining to their case, you know, I'm a do it. I hate to see anybody in a situation where they being done wrong. And me as a person that went to jail at 16, you know, I really was around Tone, you know what I mean? And, you know, he did a lot for me and showed me a lot. So, you know, I always going to be one of them people that support or get in line with everybody else that's in line to help free him and Eric Hicks, man.
But you know what? It's a lot of mothers out there right now, and had their children rights been taken away from them. They may not have been in this situation like Eyone, but they have their rights taken from just being black, you know, and how they feel, you know. And for example, how would a mother feel have their son? I think Eyone was 19 at that time.
He might have started in 19, but he probably turned 20 in that year because his birthday is in what? September? When is his birthday? Yeah, so he had to turn 20 that year.
Yeah, so
because they got locked up in 92 and they went to trial in 94.
I hadn't had my son home. I haven't seen. I mean, only way I see him if I go see him. And now we unable to see him now because of the lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother thing we didn't even get into. Like, you know, now you can't even see him. He's far away. You know, you got corona in the prisons. You know, these are all other extra things that go with the unjustly sentenced.
Yeah, thank
you know, people
so
don't even understand that part. Like, when was the last time for you to even talk to him during this time?
I mean, I text him. I email him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So that's what it comes to.
Yeah. And thank God I can write a little bit. So, you know, but other than that, you know, I just pray to God that he come home soon. You know, I pray to God I can hug him, eat at the table with him. I can, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, that's our time. Yeah. You know, I just eat at the table with him and hug him, laugh and talk and joke. You know, join, you know, like, you know, I hadn't had that.
Right.
We hadn't had that it's almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And it might be more than that because of the lifestyle, different lifestyles.
Right. Even before that, right. I understand. You know what I mean? I definitely feel for you, man, and I'm here for you. Anything I can do for you, anything I can do for the cause, let me know. And for
You know,
me, you, for everybody that's with our city, we're gonna continue to fight for Anton White and Eric Hicks and bring them home like everybody else. I mean, as long as I got breath in my body, I'm gonna read something about something, say something about it.
now I have to go deep into it because some got to be done, and you know, I mean, something has to be done. Thank you, E. I appreciate you.
All right, I'm gonna talk to you later. We're gonna let this roll and we're gonna make it do what it do. I appreciate you. Take a good night. Have you a good night, all right?
Will do. Bye
All
bye.
right, catch you later. Bye bye.